All right, let's talk about one of the absolute crown jewels of Sri Lanka's wilderness, Yala National Park. It's the most famous park in the country, a place celebrated all over the world for its incredible wildlife. But as we're about to see, all that fame, it comes with a price. And this quote right here, this is the heart of it. This is why Yala is a household name for wildlife lovers. It has this global reputation as the spot, the #1 destination to see the magnificent and oh so elusive leopard. It's why people travel from all corners of the globe to come here. And this number? This is what makes that reputation real. In the main part of the park, what's known as Block 1, scientists have documented one of the highest leopard densities anywhere in the world. We're talking about 1 leopard for every single square kilometer. That is just an unbelievable concentration for a big cat. So that brings us to the big question, right? The one we're going to tackle in this explainer. When a wild place becomes this famous, this much of a hotspot, what's the fallout? What is the true cost of being paradise? To really get the full picture, we first have to understand what makes Yala so special to begin with. So let's start by looking at the landscape itself and see why this place is the undisputed kingdom of the leopard. Most of Yala's terrain is pretty flat, but scattered all across it are these incredible, dramatic rock formations that jut out of the ground. They're called inselbergs. Think of them as ancient, weathered-down mountains. And they're not just pretty to look at, they're the secret to the leopard's success. And here's why they're such a game changer. For a leopard, these rocks are the perfect multi-tool. They give them a high vantage point to survey their territory for prey or rivals. They're a safe place to rest, up and away from any danger, and they provide secure, hidden dens for raising their cubs. Honestly, this unique geology is one of the biggest reasons the leopard population here is just so incredibly high. But, of course, the leopards don't exist in a vacuum. They're part of a much bigger, much more complex system. So let's zoom out a bit and look at how all the different habitats in Yala work together to support this amazing web of life. The key thing to understand about Yala is that it's not just one type of environment. You should picture it more like a beautiful mosaic, a patchwork of all these different ecosystems living side by side. And that mix is exactly what creates its stunning biodiversity. You've got everything from dry forests that provide cover for animals to these wide-open grasslands that are basically a buffet for deer and other grazers. Then you have wetlands just teeming with birds, and even coastal dunes where 5 different species of endangered sea turtles come to nest. Every single piece of this puzzle is critical. Okay, so Yala is an ecological masterpiece. We've got that. But this is where the story takes a twist. Because the very things that make the park so successful are also the source of its greatest threat. This is the paradox of its popularity. And this just lays it all out, the huge gap between expectation and reality. You know, people show up dreaming of this quiet, serene safari, but what they often find, especially in the busy Block 1, is traffic jams with safari jeeps. When an animal is spotted, it can turn into a chaotic chase. And you get these infamous Jeep pileups where dozens of vehicles literally swarm a single animal. And if you want a number to put that chaos into perspective, here is it. During the high season, over 600 Jeeps can be allowed into the park in a single day. And almost all of them are crammed into the limited road network of Block 1. You can just imagine the pressure that puts on the animals and the entire ecosystem. Now here's where it gets really tricky for the people who manage the park. You'd think visitors would complain about the crowds, right? But studies actually show that their satisfaction is almost entirely tied to seeing one of the big 3, a leopard, an elephant, or a sloth bear. So even if they see it in a massive crowd, they leave happy. And that makes it really, really hard to argue for reducing the number of Jeeps. But there is a potential way forward, and it's kind of hiding in plain sight. Take a look at this comparison between the crazy Block 1 and the much quieter Block 5. Sure, you're less likely to see a leopard in Block 5, but it's a fantastic place for elephants and sloth bears. And the experience? It's tranquil, serene, with hardly any other people around. It really highlights that a huge part of the solution could be just spreading people out more. Now, the pressure on Yala isn't just coming from the inside. The park isn't an isolated island. It's connected to the world around it. And some of its biggest challenges are actually happening right on its doorstep. And the biggest one by far is human-elephant conflict. What happens is, as farms and towns expand, they start to eat into the elephants' traditional habitats and block the routes they've used for generations to find food and water. This forces the elephants into villages and onto farms, which, as you can imagine, leads to really tragic conflicts with people. And the scale of this problem, it's just heartbreaking. Look at these numbers. Every single year in Sri Lanka, this conflict results in the deaths of around 125 people and a staggering 370 elephants. It's a devastating crisis for both humans and wildlife. So, with all these huge pressures from the inside and the outside, how on earth do you save a place like Yala from, well, itself? Let's get into our final section and look at some of the solutions that could create a more sustainable future for this incredible park. The good news is there are solutions, but they're not simple. It's a multi-part strategy. First, you have to manage the sheer number of visitors, maybe through better pricing, and actively encourage people to visit those quieter parts of the park. Second, the safari guides need better training, turning them from just drivers into real naturalists. And crucially, you have to protect those elephant corridors outside the park and make sure that the huge amount of money Yala makes actually gets reinvested back into protecting it. And all of this really brings us to one final powerful question. Yala's story is a perfect example of a challenge we're facing all over the planet. Its fame is its greatest strength, but it's also its biggest weakness. Finding that balance is everything. And it forces us all to ask, can we figure out how to love these wild places, how to appreciate them without loving them to death?